Well, let's kick things off. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. And thank you so much for joining our Silver Scholar panel today. Looking forward to giving you a sense of what the Silver Scholar program is all about. I should start with an introduction. My name is Laurel Grodman. I am Assistant Dean for Admissions at the Yale School of Management. I'm also a graduate of Yale SOM from the class of 2006, which I believe may have been the very first class of Silver Scholars, if I'm remembering correctly. I am joined today by our panelists, Elias, Karina, and Andres, who we will get some introductions from later, but looking forward to diving into hearing a little bit more about their Silver Scholar experience. We will certainly leave time to get some questions from the audience as well. And so I'll ask those who are participating live, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. And Diana, who is my colleague working with us behind the scenes, will be collecting those, but please use the Q&A as opposed to the chat feature so we can keep an eye on those. We're definitely going to be focusing on the panel and the student experience today rather than admissions specifically. We have lots of admissions focused events where we can answer your specific questions around the admissions and applications process. So we certainly welcome you to come to us with those questions at some of the other events that are more geared toward that. But let's try to keep things more focused on our student experience because we're fortunate to have some of our current Silver Scholars with us here today. So just to briefly talk about the Silver Scholars program, if you've started researching programs for MBA programs that take applications from college seniors, you probably know at this point that most programs are structured as sort of 2+2 deferment programs. So programs where you apply to the program in your senior year, you plan to spend a couple of years working, and then you come back and join the class for your MBA experience. The Silver Scholars program here at Yale School of Management is unique in the sense that this is, I believe, the only program that you can join directly out of your undergraduate experience. And you do not need to defer your enrollment to begin in the MBA experience. And so you will be engaged in the same 2-year full-time MBA program as all of our non-Silver Scholar MBA students. The only difference here is what we call our extended internship or the professional work experience that you'll see here. So the way that the program is structured, you'll spend your first year in the integrated core curriculum. So again, in the same classroom as all of our MBA students. The difference here is you will spend at least 1 year working full-time after that integrated core. Many students, in fact, some of the students that are joining here today will in fact spend more time than 1 year on professional work experience. So you could spend 2 to 5 years, I believe, or 2 or 3, and I believe up to 5 years gaining full-time work experience. And then you return for the final year, which could be year 3, or like I said, further out, to finish out your MBA degree with your electives that you will take to complete that degree. So we accept students coming from all different backgrounds and majors as far as your undergraduate experience. This is the universe of majors that the class that just joined us in the fall of 2022 that are Silver Scholars have studied. So you'll see you don't need to have specifically a business background or any type of particular area of focus within your undergraduate degree. In fact, we welcome the opportunity to have people coming from different backgrounds and who have different career aspirations. And certainly when we review our Silver Scholars in the application process, no 2 CVs will look alike. I do want to call out that Yale SOM also offers a number of joint degrees. We have 10 different joint degree programs. So if you have an interest in studying both business and another area that is offered within the broader Yale University ecosystem, you have many opportunities to do that. I'll ask Diana maybe to throw a link into the chat that goes into more detail about these programs, but I'll just say that The Silver Scholar option, or the option to combine any of these joint degrees, is available to Silver Scholars with the exception of the 2-year MBA and PhD degree. But all of these other options for study, including that 3-year option with the School of Public Health, are available to Silver Scholars, and you can find more detail about that. I will touch very briefly on the admissions process here. Like I said, we have other opportunities where we can dive more into the specifics here, but the admissions process for Silver Scholars is very, very similar to the process for our general MBA applicants. The only 2 differences that I will call out are with regard to the letter of recommendation and then the interview process. So letters of recommendation, we typically would request these to both come from a professional setting, from a recent supervisor in your professional field for direct applicants. For Silver Scholars, we ask that one of the 2 letters of recommendation come from an academic setting, so a professor either that you've taken a course with or that you've engaged in research or some other type of university-based activity with. So one of those will come from an academic setting, and then the second from what I'll broadly say a professional setting that can include extracurricular or research activities you've done, internships that you may have held during your undergraduate degree, but that is a slight difference for our Silver Scholars. The other difference being the interview process. So our admissions committee for Silver Scholars consists of members of my admissions team, as well as other representatives from the Yale School of Management. So we have some faculty members, we have members of our career development office, and others who engage deeply with Silver Scholars along the way. And so when you have an interview, unlike our direct MBA applicants who are typically interviewed by 2nd-year students, all Silver Scholars will be interviewed either by a member of the admission staff or a member of the admission staff paired with one of those other Silver Scholar admissions committee members that I mentioned. So small difference, not sort of a substantial difference in experience, but we're looking for the same things in our Silver Scholars as we are from our direct MBA candidates, because you will be sitting alongside our direct MBA students in the classroom. And so we're looking for your academic potential, your professional impact, your ability to lead and collaborate, and how you intend to engage in the LSOM community based on the communities you've engaged in your past experience. So we're looking at all of those same things within the admissions process. Obviously, taking Silver Scholars where they are within their professional development, knowing that you've had no full-time work experience, we're focused a little bit more on your extracurricular involvement, your internship experiences, and so on. You can see the rounds of admissions for the program. So Silver Scholars rounds are the same as our direct applicant rounds. We've already passed our round 1 deadline. So the next one coming up is round 2, which is January 5th. And then round 3 in the April timeframe. So with that, I will just leave my email address up here briefly. Feel free to reach out with any individual questions. I'll also ask Diana to share the general admissions inbox for any more technical questions around the admissions process. But as I said, I'd like to spend the bulk of the time today getting a chance to engage with our fantastic Silver Scholar panelists. So with that, let me just give you a chance to see our panelists a little bit more up front. And so why don't we kick it off just with brief introductions? So maybe Elias, we'll start with you. And if you want to share a little bit about your background, where you are within your Silver Scholars journey, where you're currently located today, which is exciting, and we will go from there.
Sure, thanks, Laurel. Everyone can hear me, right? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm Elias Kastridis. I joined Yale SOM last fall in 2021, and so I'm currently on my first year of my extended internship. I graduated from Boston University in 2020 with a dual degree in mathematics and philosophy, and I had been considering business school as a potential career path, or linguistics, so quite different. But I'd always kind of thought about pursuing economics, either within business or macro econ. And I mention this because during my first year, I'm still at work at the European Central Bank in the office located in Frankfurt, where I'll be spending at least 1 year of my extended internship experience. I was really drawn to the European Central Bank because I'm European American. part European American, and I have my Greek citizenship. So that enables me to be able to work here in an EU institution. I had really focused on choosing the ECB primarily because of my coursework at SOM. So in my undergrad, I had really focused on pure mathematics, philosophy, and linguistics, but the Yale SOM curriculum was really good in helping me kind of figure out what passions I wanted to pursue within the business world, and specifically econ. And so a lot of the coursework, which we'll be able to talk about later, both in the core curriculum and electives, even in the first year, was really instrumental in preparing me for my application and to come to the ECB. And then I was successful in the end. And the specific division I'm in is in the capital markets and financial structure subdivision, and the Directorate General for Monetary Policy. So you might imagine very quant, very econ, very finance heavy, but I felt very well prepared from that because of the first year at SOM. And I really enjoyed here. SOM is very international, so I actually got to run into a couple of classmates, both in Berlin, who one student had been doing an MBA exchange. And then actually this year, one of the IE trips is coming to Frankfurt, led by I forget one of the professors, but it'll be nice to reconnect with SOM peers there. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to answering any questions you might have, and also connecting with the other panelists, and looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elias. I see Andres is next up on my Zoom screen, so we'll go there.
Sure. So my name is Andres Hoffman. Very happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone virtually. Starting before the Silver Scholars Program, I did an industrial engineering degree at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Why did I decide to apply for the Silver Scholars Program? Because I didn't want to be an engineer, pretty much. But I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I knew that the business degree would provide a lot of open doors and a high degree of flexibility in terms of what my future path would be. And so that's kind of what drew me to business school, particularly to the Silver Scholars Program, because it allowed me to kind of kick the can down the road on making a decision about my career. And so I am now returning to the Silver Scholars Program. I'm actually in my second year at the MBA. I've been working in Boston for the last 2 years. So I did 1 year of school, 2 years of work, and now I'm back. While in Boston, I was doing consulting work for a very small boutique biopharma consulting company. And that was a really great experience. Happy to answer any questions about working in the consulting space, in the life sciences space, about Boston or anything else. And then now I am, back at school recruiting, and it's been a great second year thus far. So happy to be here and to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. And let's move on to Karina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karina. I guess a little bit about me. So I went to Vanderbilt for undergrad, where I studied engineering. And I did a lot of work at Vanderbilt in human-centered design and design thinking. And so I think because of that, I realized that I really wanted to have a job where I worked with customers, with users, and kind of work to solve problems, essentially. And I didn't really know what that meant or kind of what that translated to in the working world. But similar to Andre, I kind of realized, I probably want a business degree for that, because I really want to understand problems on a larger scale. And I knew that my engineering degree wouldn't necessarily allow me to do that. So I enrolled in the Silver Scholar Program in August 2020, kind of an interesting time in the world. So it was a lot of hybrid classes and remote classes. But I think through the Yale SOM curriculum, I realized that I really wanted to study product management, or I really wanted to go into product management in the real world. And so then after finishing my first year at Yale, I started a product management job at Microsoft. So I'm a PM for Microsoft Teams, actually. So I had to download Zoom on my computer today to join this panel. Can't say I use Zoom a lot on my day-to-day. But I've been at Microsoft for a little over a year now. And, really loving it. I'm in the Seattle area. So if anyone's in Seattle and wants to grab coffee anytime, happy to. But that's a little bit about me. And I'm planning on going back to Yale probably in the next couple of years or so, but really enjoying my time in the working world for now.
Great. Thank you all for those introductions. And I definitely want to return to each of your extended professional experiences and get a little bit more a sense later on about how you found those opportunities, how, how you were able to apply the first year of your degree program to them. But why don't we start a little bit more with your experience at SOM in your initial years. So I'd love to hear from maybe a few of you about, tell us a little bit about the SOM culture, to the extent that you had a sense of that within the application process and how that might have influenced your decision to come. You can feel free to share that as well. But again, I'm primarily interested in hearing about your first year on campus, what your experience was of the culture, and maybe some of the opportunities you took advantage of outside the classroom in that first year. So feel free to chime in whatever order.
I guess I'm happy to start because I think I was the most recent one at SOM. So yeah, I finished the first year in May of 2022, so just a couple months ago, which is crazy to think about. But I really loved it. So I was very fortunate to enter during a time where it was predominantly in person. So clubs were in full swing, professional activities were in full swing. Recruiting was not on campus, however, it was mostly virtual, but that's kind of the norm. But I mentioned that because that was a good way to really get an understanding of, let's say, like the resources that the program, that being with peers, and also interacting with the university as a whole could confer. And so, yeah, I mean, at SOM, the culture is great. I think most people by now are kind of familiar with the motto of SOM, educating leaders for business and society. And I think that in my experience, at least with my cohort members, with the people I would hang out with, it seemed like a very true sentiment that most people kind of operated on. And I really appreciate that. People were very down to earth. People were very approachable, from a wide range of industries. And so to me, it felt like you could really talk to anyone and for whatever industry that you might have an interest in. And there wouldn't be any sort of aloofness or any sort of judgment, because part of business school is going to find new paths or change your path completely or explore something new. And also I was very lucky outside of not just the classroom, but outside of SOM to really interface with a lot of the rest of the university. I guess I wanted to try to stay young as a recent graduate from undergrad, but I had joined the European Horizons, this student-run called Policy Think Tank, Policy Incubator that had been founded at Yale back in 2015, I think, and had really exploded in popularity until the pandemic. But it was really great. It was both undergrad and graduate students, and we had quite a bit of events despite restrictions from the pandemic, and it's still going very strong this year. And I hope to be back on campus in April for one of the flagship conferences. And I mention this also because I had tried, not sure if it succeeded, but to resurrect EuroSOM, the European students, open to anyone, but the European students professional group at SOM, kind of to be like a sister chapter of European Horizons. And I think it's ongoing with some other second years that stayed that were non-silver scholars. But yeah, I mean, overall, the SOM has been great. The community is very inviting. The facilities are world-class. I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of Evans Hall. I think it's beautiful with glass and steel. Maybe it's not the Yale-esque sort of architecture, but I think it makes a statement on its own. And yeah, I think it was a very great place, and I can go into specifics later on, but it was very good for me, and also very eager to hear what my panelists have to say about their experiences. So.
Great, thank you, Elias. Andres?
Yeah, sure, I can chime in. First of all, I agree about the facilities at Evans Hall. Like anytime someone comes to visit me in New Haven, one of the first things I do is show them Evans Hall, because it's a very nice building. But in terms of my experience and the culture, one of the things that really helped me in my first year, particularly, being a bit younger than everybody else, not having as much work experience, being in like a little bit of an earlier life stage than a lot of my classmates, was the cohort system. So I'm not sure if everyone listening is familiar, but in your first year, you take all of your classes with the same group of people. And then even within that, you're assigned to a small learning team whereby all of your end of semester projects and a lot of your assignments are done with the same small group of students. So for me, that was really, really helpful for kind of forming a jumping off point to start building social connections in an environment where I was a bit less comfortable because, again, being a bit younger than everybody else and all of that. So I would say those two structures really, really helped foster an environment whereby I could start making connections from day one. Like being in the same classroom with the same people for every class really does help to make friends quickly. Also, the affinity clubs. I was part of the Association of Hispanic and Latin American Students, which was another great way to get involved and make friendships outside of just your cohort. So I guess the point for me was no shortage of structures in place to facilitate making connections and making new friends. And that was really great for me coming in fresh out of school and feeling, like I was in a bit of a different stage than all of my classmates, but very quickly being able to make connections despite that.
Yeah, so I guess I can talk a little bit about my experience. So it was definitely a very unique experience kind of going in August 2020, like I said. So things were pretty remote, pretty virtual. So I didn't really know what to expect at all when I first started at Yale. But I think one of the things is it far exceeded my expectations. I think Yale really made an effort to make sure that its culture and its experience was translating, whether it was in person, hybrid, Zoom University. And so I think one of the things that still amazes me is when I talk to Yale students of other years who, had a much more normal experience than me. I think we actually have a lot of the same experiences and, a lot of the same things translated. So all of the clubs, I think, were very similar. All of the cohort experiences were the same. And I think part of that really has to do with the people at Yale. I think that, coming in as a Silver Scholar, it's a really unique experience because you are so much younger than everyone. You don't necessarily have the same life experiences that everyone else has. But I think what really amazed me is that so many of my classmates right away, really took me under their wing. And, they definitely didn't treat me like I was younger than them or that I didn't know nearly as much. And I think if anything, they really wanted to hear from me. They really valued my opinion being a Silver Scholar. And they really thought, okay, well, if she's, coming here straight from undergrad, there has to be something really unique about her. What can she bring to the table? And so I just met incredible classmates with incredibly different backgrounds. One of my really close friends, she was a VP in investment banking. And that was something that, I never thought I would necessarily be interacting with someone like that at that level. And she was just helping me in my finance classes. So I think that it was just an incredible, incredible time. And, one of those things where, I never thought I would meet so many incredible people with incredible different backgrounds. So I thought, it was just one of those times where, even though there was so much going on in the world, people really making the most out of their experience at Yale.
I'd like to pick up on a thread that Karina just mentioned and Andres before around, we had a number of questions before the event submitted around this, the topic of, given that Silver Scholars are coming in earlier in their lives, earlier in their professional experience at sort of a different life stage, but also thinking about how in an MBA classroom, how valuable it is to have professional perspective and to be able to pull from your classmates' experiences in that sense. We had a number of questions around how does it feel to come into the classroom without full-time professional work experience? Did you feel at a disadvantage at all from that perspective? And then maybe the flip side of that, what advantages did you see as a student coming into the classroom, coming directly from your undergrad experience? And maybe if we can hear from one or two panelists.
I'm happy to take this one because I actually that does remind me of something. So I actually academically felt that I was at quite an advantage having come just out of undergrad. A lot of the coursework was material that I had seen not too long ago. And then I was also still kind of in the rhythm of classwork, submitting like the rhythm of school is quite different than the rhythm of the professional world. And there's kind of a gear shift that has to take place for people coming back to school. But that was not the case for someone coming right out of undergrad. It was just like getting right back to it. So Academically, I actually felt that I was a step ahead. Socially and professionally is where it was a bit of the opposite. Like I mentioned before, just being a bit younger and kind of in a different life stage than all of my classmates and peers. However, not to repeat myself, but there were many structures in place to help with that and to ensure that forming connections and making friends was not so difficult once I was at SOM. Also, connecting to my fellow Silver Scholars was really helpful because it was a group that was kind of all in the same place. We could relate to each other's experiences, and those were some of my closest friends during my first year. So I'm not sure if Elias and Karina can relate, but that was my experience. Academically, actually, I felt at more of an advantage than my peers.
Yeah, I think socially at first, I felt that it was really daunting because I thought, oh, why are all these people going to want to be friends with me? I'm just 22, I'm fresh out of college. And, I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe I'll probably just make friends with a lot of the Silver Scholars. But I can say that that absolutely was not the case. I think Yale really does do a really great job of truly integrating Silver Scholars in the actual MBA class. We take all the same classes where, in all of their learning teams, in their cohorts, we take the same clubs as them, we do recruiting with them. And so I think I found myself just organically in the mix with everybody else. No one treated me any differently. There was no kind of stigma of being a Silver Scholar. And, I think even now I keep in touch with so many of my friends. Some of them came and actually visited me in Seattle this summer. I'm going to one of their weddings next September. And so I think that it's really just about, making an effort to get to know them because they really do want to make an effort to get to know you. You're just as much part of the MBA class as them, and you're just as much part of the experience as them. And then similar to Andres, I, kept in touch with a lot of my Silver Scholar friends. Some of them actually just started their second year now. So, I'm hearing all about their experiences. And, they're super helpful in terms of hearing about, jobs and, what I'm doing out here in Seattle. And so, super grateful for all of the people I met at Yale. But I wouldn't say, it's anything different than a normal MBA experience by any means.
For what it's worth, and granted this was a while ago, although I've heard this echoed in more recent classes, I actually didn't know who the Silver Scholars were in my class, or I should say I didn't recognize that they were Silver Scholars until quite deep into my first year. I never got the sense that in the classroom, Silver Scholars stood out as not having that professional experience. And now being on the admission side of things, I can understand why, because if you're selected to be in the Silver Scholars program and necessarily don't have any full-time work experience, you're being selected because you bring something extraordinary to the table through the experiences that you have had academically and in your your quasi-professional or extracurricular experiences. So I think any sort of a negative anticipation about what it's going to be like to come into the classroom from, without having the advantage of full-time work experience is, I think, largely overcome by the time you actually mix into the class and everyone, like I said, everyone we bring into the program really has something valuable to add. And so I'm not surprised to hear that that's been sort of your experience in practice. Let's shift a little bit to the career side of things. So I'm going to throw a few different related questions out there, and feel free to pick up on any subset of them. But obviously, there's a lot of interest in understanding how this all works, both with your sort of extended professional experience during the time in between your two academic years, as well as what the recruiting experience looks like on the back end when you're ready to enter into a full-time experience. So would be interested to hear from each of you, and again, pick up on whichever of these you'd like, about how you found your extended professional experience or internship, what resources you were able to use, within the SOM community at large, and in particular, using our career development office. And maybe a little bit more philosophical spin on that. To what extent did your aspirations shift when you came into Yale versus what you were thinking about when you were going through the application process and considering whether you wanted to do a program like the Silver Scholars Program? So it's a few interrelated things, but feel free to pick up on any elements of that.
I'm happy to kick off. So yeah, a couple questions, a couple threads there. So my career aspirations coming to SOM were kind of informed by my undergrad internship experience. So while in undergrad, probably the most important one for me was interning at one of the US national labs, Oak Ridge in Tennessee, which really played upon my coursework in mathematics and data visualization and statistics to an extent. And so I actually thought that that could be a good background or a good springboard for management consulting. That was kind of the industry that a lot of SOM people, or I guess business school students, are interested in general. But I thought I saw a connection there because, based upon the evidence, based upon the way things are, you have to tell a story, right? At least that was the project that I was doing. Back at Oak Ridge, it was a national infrastructure project that had to solve a really big problem. So how do you break it down, and then how do you communicate a story to stakeholders, right? I ended up not doing management consulting because here I am at the European Central Bank. So I just want to say that your aspirations can definitely change, and that's not a demerit at all. It changed for many reasons, mainly because when I got to SOM, I realized, wow, you can think big. Not that thinking about management consulting is thinking small, but no, I mean, there's so many people that you can meet, so many different backgrounds, and then SOM offers, and Yale at large offers you quite a lot of access to different ideas, figures, and this kind of ethos of the university at large at trying to make a really big impact. And I thought to myself, well, one good way of doing that is maybe working at like a really multinational, multilateral, international institution, which is the ECB. And so I thought long and hard actually about whether to apply and how to apply into what positions. I had done quite a bit of consultation with the Career Development Office, CDO, because one of the questions is going abroad, right? Leaving the States to go, well, I just decided the US and work there. What's it like? And I didn't feel any qualms, honestly. I felt like the work would be really great for me based upon the preparation that I was accumulating at Yale, and some of the counsel that I was getting from CDO, Career Development Office, and then also just other international students, because SOM is very international. I can't plug that enough. As an international student, kind of international student myself, like I can say it's a very, very cosmopolitan atmosphere. And so I applied. I was able to get some preparation, just availing myself of the resources that CDO has, and then I was offered the position in the end. And so yeah, I think it was a very fruitful way, and I really think that being at SOM was instrumental in being able to get here. And I'm only more eager to kind of continue this path along central banking, probably return to the US and maybe make my way into the Federal Reserve System, which SOM has a lot of connections with, actually, you might imagine. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just kind of a multitude of factors that came together really well. Of course, you have to put in the effort, and you have to think long and hard, I think, about what you really want to recruit for, without being afraid of thinking about new paths, or talking to new people, or just even entertaining an idea and then seeing where it goes.
I'm really glad you shared that example of your own kind of personal pivot in terms of where you're focused, because I do think that there's this conception when you're applying to business school that you have to have your sort of 2, 5, 10, 15-year plan. And in our experience of looking at MBA graduates over many, many years, Silver Scholars and otherwise, the evidence is very clear that many people pivot from their original goals once they get to business school. And I think for many of the reasons Elias shared, and for other reasons as well. And so our interest is very much not in understanding how you're plotting out your plan, because we know that that will very well change, but obviously, as a Silver Scholar who's making a decision to enter into an MBA pathway at this time, we're much more interested in just understanding broadly what your interests are, why this is the sort of educational step that you're looking to pursue at this point. And surely you've developed interests. As you know, as Elias, I think, pointed out nicely, your interests can end up evolving in a number of different directions, but it's a good thing to know, to have an awareness of what you're interested in, what sorts of tools you need to be able to pursue opportunities along the lines of those interests more deeply. And then once you get here, you can explore the different job types that will allow you to do that. So thank you for bringing up that example there. Let's hear from Karina and Andres as well on sort of this broad set of questions around careers as a part of the Silver Scholar program.
Yeah, so I think for me, one thing that I found is, everyone always says that the MBA network is really strong, but I think I found that the Silver Scholar Network is about 10 times as strong. And I think that's really just because, it's a really unique program. It's not necessarily something that where there's a completely clear carved out path. And so I think anytime you mention or you talk to any Silver Scholar, they'll always say that they've talked to about 10 other Silver Scholars about their career path. And, anytime I've ever reached out to a Silver Scholar, right away, they're willing to talk with me. They're willing to sit down and spend 3 hours on the phone with me, never having met me ever before. And so I think for me, when I first started in the program, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, how long of a gap period I wanted, whether I wanted to pursue a full-time job or an internship. And then I had no idea, obviously, what type of internship or full-time job I wanted to pursue. So I really just started with talking to a lot of Silver Scholars. And one of the Silver Scholars I talked with, I think she was a PM at Tesla, and she was just kind of telling me about product management, about her life in tech. And I think slowly I started to realize that that was a job I really wanted to pursue. And then from there, it was just about talking to a lot of Yale MBAs and just MBAs in general that had pursued a path in product management and what that meant. So I think slowly the gears started to turn a little bit, and that's kind of how I ended up in the job I am now. But I'll say that, the Silver Scholar Network was incredible and an invaluable network to me. And so that's just a huge advantage of the program, I'll say.
Yeah, I think I would love to build off of that. I would completely agree with what Karina said about the network for Silver Scholars being very strong. For me, being in my second year, I think one thing that is a particular strength for the Silver Scholars that the traditional MBAs don't get to enjoy is the fact that when you come back in your second year, if you're recruiting again, if you've decided, you're not going to go back to where you were before and you might want to try something new, as was the case for myself, a lot of my first year classmates have the jobs now that I am recruiting for. So that has been really, really helpful in being able to tap into that, like just having that extended period whereby your classmates and your friends go on to be at the places you want to work for 1 or 2 years, and then being able to reach out and having that personal connection at these companies has been really, really helpful. To the point where I recently was able to secure a job in management consulting, one of my kind of like top target jobs. And the fact that I had connections from my first year, close connections, to help me throughout the process was really helpful. So that is one of the strengths of the Silver Scholars program that is really, really felt strongly in your second year that the traditional MBA route does not get to enjoy as much.
Great. And as I mentioned, we have participation from the Career Development Office actually in the admissions process, which is unique to the Silver Scholars program. And we do that intentionally because it is a little bit of a differently structured search, especially for that 1 year internship, or professional experience, which is not necessarily structured exactly the same as one would look for the standard MBA summer internship. So with that in mind, I think a couple of you touched on this very briefly, but I'd like to hear just a little bit more about what interaction with the CDO looks like as you are pursuing either full-time or that professional experience role.
Sure, I can get started on that again. Yeah, I mean, CDO, Career Development Office, CDO. I mean, it's really, for me, it was two things. There was, interacting with the people and also just making use of these like permanent resources that exist. So on the latter part, I mean, you have within Evans Hall a whole suite of resources that you can use. The physical interview offices, which I used quite often for meetings or for rounds of interviews. Meeting rooms in order to just have my own space so I can prepare or work on things. And then also there's this whole digital infrastructure that exists in CDO, without revealing too much, I guess, but like, that assists you and helps you in recruiting, who's posting for what, whom do you need to contact for this or that company, what does historical data look like? And if you have the time and you want to avail yourself of that, that's really, really useful in order to, you know, narrow down your search and enrich your search in what you're trying to achieve. And then of course, so that's really like the hard assets, I guess, that CDO offers you, you know, all of the digital and physical resources. And then of course there's the human capital. So you can do interview prep, resume review, excuse me. There's like an open office hours and a table, or at least during my time, you know, in Evans Hall courtyard that you can stop by. And it's just good to have people that have a sounding board. You know, there's different CDO career mentors depending on what background they have and what career interest you might have. And so there's always usually a match where you can have someone who has an understanding of what you're trying to achieve. And yeah, I think it's best, one piece of advice in general is to kind of use those resources over time and not just like focus all on 1 month and then, oh, okay, you know, forget about it. I'm going to do some other stuff. And then realize last minute, oh, wait, I need to schedule this or that. It's better to just do things as a personal approach and just free advice, do things cumulatively over time and really, you know, establish relationships, get to know the infrastructure and get help when you need it. That's really why they're there. And I think they're more than happy to help you. And that was really my experience with a CDO this past year.
Great, thank you. So I think I've been trying to incorporate some of our audience questions along the way, but I think at this point I'm going to turn it over more directly. So just as a reminder, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A function and we'll be taking a look at what's coming through there. But one question that came up, which Elias, I think you touched upon a little bit earlier, but I'd like to explore some more, is the question was around ability to take classes at other Yale schools, but I'd like to broaden that just more generally to you know, each of your experiences engaging with Yale University beyond just Yale SOM, whether that's been in the classroom or through other areas. So I'll turn it over to you.
Was this in particular to me? Sorry, Laurel, or was this in general?
Yeah, I think it could be done. It reminded me of you were talking about sort of the European connection outside of SOM before, but it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to that. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to take either classes outside of SOM or join any organizations or, you know, conferences or speakers or anything going on outside. And Karina, I recognize this was probably a lot more difficult in your first year on campus just because of some of the COVID restrictions in place.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Karina.
No. I'm sure your answer is going to be a lot more than mine.
Okay. So actually taking classes at other schools is something that I've not done yet, but I have really wanted to. I have Silver Scholar peers and classmates who did that, and particularly taking classes at the law school is something that I know is very popular among SOM students, and I've had Silver Scholar classmates who have done that. My biggest involvement with the Yale community outside of SOM has been via clubs, like recreational clubs. When I first got here, using undergrad recreational clubs as a way to meet people and sort of become integrated into the New Haven and Yale community was something that was kind of a good jumping off point, because I was closer in age to Yale University seniors than I was to a lot of my SOM classmates. So I like playing poker. So I joined like the Yale undergrad poker club, and that was helpful for me to start meeting people. Further than that, I personally have not taken advantage of the classes at other schools. I would really like to. That's one thing that I'm looking forward to doing this year, but I know that a lot of Silver Scholars do.
Yeah, I should mention too, in terms of taking other classes. So the majority of your first year is the MBA core. So there are more limited opportunities in your first year to take classes outside of SOM. You do have a chance to do some electives in the spring, but I think the majority of people who are able to take classes outside of Yale, which actually the majority of students at SOM do take at least one class outside of SOM during the time they're at Yale. So it is in fact quite common. But it would be more likely to take place in your second year. So it would make a lot of sense that you haven't had as much of an opportunity to do that. And my understanding is the most popular area these days to take classes outside of SOM is actually in the computer science department. And it's because, not because people are necessarily looking to become software developers out of their MBA degree, but maybe like Karina are working in organizations where you absolutely have to be able to speak the language of people with skill sets in those areas. And so getting some entry level exposure is really popular, but students really there's no limit to the number of classes you can take outside of SOM in your electives, and there's no limit to where you take those classes. So it's really just a matter of finding a spot in a class across the university. So I know the School of the Environment, the law school, School of Public Health also tend to be very popular areas for cross-registration.
Yeah, now that you say that, Laurel, you remind me that one of the returning Silver Scholars who was my first year, and also returning this year, is taking a computer science course at the at Yale undergrad. So yeah, that's definitely a popular one.
Yeah, and I remember hearing, don't quote me on this, but that Yale has one of the highest numbers of dual degrees. And so I was actually really surprised how many of, people in my cohort were actually, MBA MDs, MBA JDs, MBA MPH, Masters in Public Health. And so, there were so many people doing so many other really unique and interesting things. And obviously that very much affected the types of jobs they wanted to pursue. So it was just another really unique perspective within our own classrooms.
We have gotten a couple of questions about the joint degree. There are, I think Diana, if she hasn't already, will put a link in the chat that gives a little bit more specifics around the pathways for that. As far as how that translates for Silver Scholars, I'll just say briefly, it works the same. So whatever time savings you would gain from doing the dual MBA plus other degree programs still holds. But as a Silver Scholar, you would still need to have that at least 1 year of professional experience in there somewhere. So again, every degree program sort of has a different pathway in terms of how you would pursue your time at SOM versus the other school. But within there, and before your final year of electives at SOM, you would still need to spend at least 1 year gaining professional experience. So that's sort of an overarching view of how Silver Scholars integrates with joint degrees along the way. But if you have specific questions about a given degree program, you could email the MBA inbox for a more kind of concrete plan of how you would work your way through the degree programs. Let's see, this is asking each of you to reach back a little bit to your application process, but there is a question around how you went about finding your professional recommendations. So how you thought about who would best represent you in the admissions process from a non-academic standpoint, but from, to give a sense of how you operate in a professional or extracurricular context. If you can remember who wrote your recommendation and how you thought about who to target for that, because it's sometimes not as obvious as just going to your current employer as you would with if you were coming in with a little bit of full-time work experience.
Yeah, so I think for me, when I was applying as a senior, I thought, oh, it probably makes the most sense to just have my manager from my junior internship write my letter of recommendation because it was most recent. And so, I was getting ready to ask him, and then I kind of thought about it and I thought, well, he was my manager, but he didn't necessarily oversee a lot of my work. Whereas my manager from my sophomore year internship going into my junior year, he and I actually worked really closely together. We had a great relationship. We kept up over email. We even had a few phone calls. And so when kind of thinking, who can really speak to, my work and me as a person and really write, a quality letter of recommendation, I actually ended up choosing him in the end. And so I think that kind of, goes to show that it's really about, how can someone represent you in the best of ways and really speak to you on a personal level and a professional level. So I would say it doesn't necessarily need to be someone who, has necessarily the most recent experience with you or the experience that you're trying to necessarily highlight in your application. I think it's really about kind of the quality of the letter of recommendation. And so that was kind of the route I ended up going down. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the first and most obvious choice. I would actually, really try to think, who can speak to me the best.
Thank you. Let's go to have a couple of questions about student clubs. And I know some of you touched upon your involvement in clubs earlier, but maybe let's dig into that a little bit more and thinking maybe in particular as a Silver Scholar. I know, for the clubs that you end up engaging deeply in, many times you'll take on a leadership position. And so maybe if you can touch a little bit about how that works for Silver Scholars, just given that you don't have that natural progression going from year one to year two, and moving up into sort of a leadership position that way. So if anyone wants to just speak broadly about your club involvement and maybe in that, obviously our clubs include a wide range of activities. So some of them are professional clubs that are very much geared on letting you learn about different industries and functions and supporting you in that career search. Some of them are affinity based, and some of them are interest based. So clubs is sort of a broad span. So maybe if you want to talk about your involvement in some of those different types of organizations, and then again, how your involvement has been influenced at all by the fact of your being a Silver Scholar.
I can jump in on this because I was pretty active this past year in various number of clubs. Again, this is kind of reinforced the message that the clubs kind of exist. There's professional clubs and there's, I guess you can say, recreational clubs. Professionally, they exist so that you can meet people and explore. Even though I ended up in central banking, I was in the marketing club and the marketing professional club. And what I actually did was I was part of a small casing team for I think 7 weeks, where we would meet once a week, and really drill and prepare for marketing interviews. Even though I didn't apply to any marketing jobs in the end, I mean, it was still knowledge that you gain, right? And like, I personally found it interesting. And so you can still do you can put on multiple hats while you're there. I was also part of the data analytics club, which kind of made sense with my background. And I'm actually hoping to be not necessarily a club leader, but just, helping them with the curriculum, because the professional clubs sometimes run curricula that they try to confer skills, to the members. And because I work here at the bank, I'm in a very, very data intensive role. And so I'm more than happy to just bring my experience for people who are interested in these kinds of fields. And then I was also in the hockey club, which was really fun. So not professional, totally unprofessional club, if you ask me. And it was really great. It's just casual, I mean, it's kind of a tradition at SOM, the hockey club. I barely skated. I had done some skating earlier in my lifetime, but the point is that you go and you really have fun, right? Like, even though you're a Silver Scholar, notwithstanding everything I just said being a Silver Scholar, but people are really accepting. I mean, maybe 5 or 6 people had actually done hockey before of like the dozens of participants. So, you're really just there to have fun and get to know your peers, right? And then, of course, I was in the undergrad club, and we had tried to organize a lot of things, notwithstanding COVID. So that was very difficult. But I'm very glad to be interacting with them from afar. And so there's just so many levels, and there's so many things that you can really enrich yourself in your free time. And you'll realize your free time will be very hard to split among what you really want to do, because there's so many opportunities.
I wasn't necessarily going to ask this question, but you reminded me with the sort of uncanny participation in hockey at SOM, despite the relatively low level of skill coming in. In addition to hockey, another thing that Yale or New Haven is known for more broadly is pizza. So I got the question, is the pizza really as good as everyone says it is? I bet we'll have different responses to this depending on where you're coming from pre-SOM.
So actually my apartment, which you can't see because it's blurred in the background, is literally a stone's throw. So it's about 50 yards from Modern Pizza, which is one of the more famous ones. And they cook all day. So like starting at 10 a.m., the smell of pizza wafts through my back door and the craving for pizza begins. So
it's really a part of daily life for you.
Yes, exactly. It really is. And I will say the pizza is pretty good. Pizza is kind of like a high floor type of food. That's how I put it. Like, it's hard to make really bad pizza. So I think the delta between bad pizza and really good pizza is lower than in some foods. But having said that, the pizza is definitely on the high end in New Haven. So disagree, Elias, with your thumbs down, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is a very personal preference driven thing. New Haven pizza is extremely thin crust. It's made in an extremely specific way. So I think that it could be polarizing in that sense, but
Yeah,
I'm on the pro side of New Haven pizza.
The white clam pizza, I'm not super sold on that one. I had that one time. It's kind of a New Haven staple. I don't know. I don't know if I would go that far, but the other ones are pretty good.
I just want to explain the position very quickly. I used to love New Haven pizza, and then I came here. I have Italian colleagues, and I was like, "Oh man, I love American pizza," and they're like, "What are you doing? You're crazy." And so ever since, I cannot utter that in this building. Otherwise,
okay.
that's really the reason why. That
Understood. As you can see, Yaleys are opinionated about everything, but pizza's a pretty hot topic. I want to be mindful of time, and so I think maybe just as a last bit of advice from all of our participants today, I'm thinking about where those joining us today are within their sort of exploration process and trying to get together their best application and embark upon these next couple of years. What last bits of advice do you have for candidates for preparing for the Silver Scholars Program? And maybe if there's anything you wish you knew before applying and getting to school that you can impart upon the audience today, and we'll conclude there.
I'd be happy to start with this one. And Laurel, do you know if the essay prompt is still "What is your biggest commitment," or does it change?
Yes.
It is still "What is your biggest commitment"?
Yes.
Okay, great. My biggest piece of advice, and it may sound cliche, but I'll explain, is to be yourself. I think a lot of people, and I definitely went through when putting together my application, the thought process of what does a business school want me to look like? And I don't think that will give you the best chances for success. I think the best chances for success, particularly with the essay prompt and then like in the interview and generally putting together your resume, is just to be really truly genuine about what you are passionate about. What are some, just what makes you tick as a person, and what are really your goals and aspirations. And that is where you will find, in being genuine and in really displaying your passion is where you will give yourself the best chances to succeed. I know that my topic for my essay actually changed quite a bit when my framework changed from what does SOM want me to say to what do I want to say about myself. And so as cliche as it sounds, I think it really, really is true that in order to put your best self forward, you have to put your true self forward and just tap into what really drives you, what you're really passionate about. And yeah, that's my advice.
I think that's extremely good advice, and I think hopefully you get a sense, just even with the diversity of backgrounds that our panelists are bringing to the table, there's no one right formula for who we're looking for within the admissions process. And so being yourself is definitely your best bet for being able to present a coherent and compelling application. Elias, Karina, is there anything else you want to chime in with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, couldn't have said it better myself. And then I would say, in terms of, advice I have for anyone, coming to campus as a Silver Scholar, one thing that I wish I had done earlier was just talk to other Silver Scholars about their experience going into it, not just from a recruiting point of view and a professional development point of view, but I think just to kind of learn a little bit more about the program and, about how to make friends and, just, what people wish they had done and, what they wish they had known kind of going into the program. I think that there are so many different things that you can kind of become involved in. It's really easy to get overwhelmed, and it's really easy to kind of just focus on one or two specific things. And so I think my advice for people coming to campus, if you are coming in as a Silver Scholar, is to really just kind of learn about everything Yale SOM has to offer and really, try to figure out, what do I want to focus on? What are the opportunities here? Because I think it really is easy to get overwhelmed, especially as a 22-year-old coming out of college. And business school is such a unique experience. It goes by so quickly. Can't believe I'm already halfway done with it. So, I think just talking to Silver Scholars, learning about their experiences is really helpful.
Thank you. Elias, anything else you want to round it out with?
No, Andre and Karina said it really well. I'm just going to give the same advice that I give actually to anyone who usually has a coffee chat with me, like prospective students, both Silver Scholar, MBA. It's just really don't lie. Like, honestly, tell the truth. Don't stretch anything. As a matter of principle, I mean, for me, first and foremost, just be authentic. Do justice to yourself by doing justice to the truth. Like, that's really my only advice. Any component on the application, just not as harsh as don't lie, but be honest. You're only going to help yourself in the long run if you do it that way. So
great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elias, Andres, Karina. Thank you so much. You've all had extraordinary paths through the Silver Scholars program so far, and I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your either academic or work day to be here with us today. Thank you to all the participants who joined. As I mentioned before, we have a number of opportunities to engage either with the admissions office or with the community. We are back up and running with campus visits if you are interested in getting a chance to experience Yale on the ground. You're welcome to do that. And like I said, we'll have a number of more application focused events coming up as well. So maybe Diana, if you could put the link to the events page in the chat before we go, and you can keep an eye on opportunities there. But thank you again, once again, to our panelists and everyone for joining us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
take care, everyone. Have a nice day.